Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. I know we have a long day ahead of us, and it should be a well-informed day. So I appreciate everyone being here, and I see that we have a quorum. So we're going to get started, and we'd start with the flag salute. So Vice Chair Superintendent, lead us in flag salute.
Ready? Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a couple of announcements this morning, actually a lot of announcements. Letters from the public on matters before the board are aggregated and filed in an electronic folder and sent to the board by staff. There were no letters received for this meeting. We appreciate the public's continued cooperation in emailing all meeting-related correspondence to CCEE at ccee@ccee-ca.org by noon on the Friday immediately preceding the board meeting. Reminders to the audience that the sign-up cards are available on the table outside the boardroom. Members of the public who wish to speak on an item should complete a sign-up card and place it in the box at the staff table. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker. In order to ensure that everyone gets his or her 2 minutes, there is a timer at the podium that will flash red and signal to each speaker when the 2-minute time limit has been reached. Item 9 is general public comment, during which members of the public may provide comments on items that are not specifically listed on the board agenda. Further reminders to the audience that if anyone wishes to submit materials at the meeting, they should provide at least 15 copies to Erica Bargan, where he's there, with the item number that it pertains to clearly indicated, and please do not give any information directly to board members. Reminder to all speakers, board members, members of the audience, and staff to introduce themselves, identify who they are, and who they're representing. Reminder to our board that the microphones are on when speaking. So if this is your first time, the red button in front of you, when it's on, you're on. It's also important that the board members speak into the microphone so their comments can properly be recorded as part of the proceedings. So I believe we will get started with item 1 of the agenda, and we're going to move some items. Oh, there we go. Perfect timing. We have a number of items to get to. This one, most important in our day, is an oath in office to swear in our state superintendent of public instruction, Tony Thurman. Is there any discussion by the board? Any objection? I think we'll do you, and we can talk to Jim at the break, but we'll be okay. Any public comment on this item? Okay. Motion? Do I need a motion for an oath? No. We're just going to start. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I've done that, and I can't remember all of the words, and you did great. So thank you. Item 2, prior to approval of the minutes, we have several requests to move some items on the agenda. I'd like to move item 7, which would be an accommodation to our partners out in Inglewood, that they would move up right underneath item 4 of the executive director's report in order to facilitate their ability to get back to their respective district. Is there any objection to that? Okay. So moved. We'll move item 7, then right underneath item 4. Item 2, approval of the minutes from the December 5th, 2019 regular board meeting. Do I have any discussion from the board regarding the minutes? Okay. Any general public comment regarding the minutes for December 5th? All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move approval.
Motion by Board Member Monroe. Second by Mr. Sprante. All in favor? Aye. Aye. So item 2 moves with. You bet. Superintendent Thurman is an abstention. Item 3, approval of draft amended conflict of interest. This is a discussion and action item presented by James Baca, counsel to the board.
Thank you. Brooks is another attorney, so he knows how to turn on the microphone. So that's who I needed to turn to. Welcome, Superintendent Thurman, to our meeting. Mr. Chair, on a biannual or every other year, biannual sometimes means twice a year, but every other year on odd number years, the board needs to approve an amended conflict of interest code. And this is an odd number year, so consequently, this is the 1919, 1920 years, odd number years, so the conflict of interest code needs to be updated. You do have a copy in your material, just a few changes having to do with the staff, a new deputy director, and we re-entitled, or some of the directors have new titles and new responsibilities. There needs to be a 45-day public comment period. So our recommendation is, per the agenda, that the board approve the conflict of interest and the draft amendment, and that the CCEE authorize the executive director to take all necessary actions to notice and hold a 45-day public comment period required by the California Code of Regulations.
Thank you.
Any questions?
There be none. Any discussion? Board? Seems pretty straightforward.
It is.
Yeah.
Not much different.
Not much. Okay. Any comments, general public comments? There be none. Do I have a motion to approve the conflict of interest, draft amended conflict of interest code for the CCEE, and give the direction to the executive director to notice and hold a 45-day public comment period? Moved by Superintendent Thurman.
Second.
Second by Board Member Lyon. All in favor? Aye. So move. Item passes. Item 4, Executive Director's Progress Report, Information and Discussion Action Item.
Yes, good morning and welcome, Superintendent Thurman. We're really excited to have you here with us today and looking forward to working collectively with you and your staff. I always want to take an opportunity to thank Erica. Erica works really hard no matter where we end up landing. It seems like we're somewhere different every board meeting too, and she makes it work and does it beautifully. So thank you, Erica. Appreciate that. And always take an opportunity to thank the incredible staff we have. People ask me all the time, how many people do you have? I'm like, not enough, right? They work very hard, and the work is always changing, and they're very adaptable, and really just a great crew. You're only as good as the folks you work with, too. So I feel very fortunate to work with each and every one of them. So I have just a brief report for you this morning. I'm going to have some staff kind of come up and speak specifically to a couple of the items. The first item, the governor's 2021 budget. Our partners and our administrative agent from Marin Brooks is going to come up and speak directly more to that, and you'll probably get some help from Trina at the same time, I'm not sure. And so I'll chime in where it's appropriate. So I'll save that conversation to that part of the report. I will ask Carla Estrada. Carla, if you would come up a little bit and speak to the second item, which is systemic instructional review support. And I know the board is familiar with the work we've done with systemic instructional reviews, in particular in the work that we've done in Inglewood. We just finished some, well, we're in the middle of finalizing Vallejo, and we've done it as well in a charter school in the state too. What's unique about this item today is that in the state system of support, there are 3 levels. Level 1 is really focused on more professional development and resources that we're seeing now in our budget through CSLA and Educator Workforce Investment Grant, and possibilities of new work in the governor's budget as well. Level 2, the work around differentiated assistance, is really the work of county offices. We have some small efforts in that, but we don't really do much of that work. That's really speaks to the capacity of county offices. This level 3, intensive intervention, is we do not have any districts in the state in intensive intervention, and we still do not. But in order for a district to qualify under intensive intervention, there's really 2 pieces that need to happen. One is based on dashboard data. And if I get this wrong, please help me, staff, or Sarah. I see Sarah in the audience there too, State Board of Ed staff too. We now have 3 years of data, right, based on the dashboard data. The statute says 3 out of 4 years. If a district has student groups, 3 student groups or more, who are red, and 2 areas or more, right, consistently over that 3 out of 4 years, then they qualify for the CCEE to be able to go in and do some type of a review to determine, do they have the capacity to be able to move forward and be able to help their students achieve at a level that they're currently not achieving. If they are not able to do that, if we make that determination, then the state superintendent has the ability to do some academic intervention, and there are things identified what those options could be. Things such as an academic advisor in the district, make changes to their LCAP, have some direct impact on what happens. So this is new this year. We have 4 districts now who qualify based on their dashboard data. And so in this new work with the review, what we've decided to do is just use the systemic instructional review to really just kind of go in there and really try to determine what's going on, right? And really it is truly to support the work of county offices as they're working with districts. So we really see this as a collaborative effort to kind of work with them to help inform. We don't see this as we go in one time and say they do or they don't, and then that we would recommend that they move forward. We actually think there's some obligation to help them. And so collectively, we see the opportunity as being able to work collectively through the leadership of the county office, as well as look at maybe we can bring the geo leads in, as well as some of the other leads that might be available based on where their needs are identified. So I wanted to have Carla come up and speak a little bit about the approach that we're taking and recognizing the systemic instructional review, the way we've done it in our districts who are in fiscal distress, will be similar but a little bit different, right? Because we're doing this on behalf of the superintendent and really trying to work with county offices. And the thing that I try to clarify for people is there still are no districts in intensive intervention. We're still not in level 3. We're really still at level 2, right? But this is just an opportunity to provide more information to inform the work. So Carla, if you would come up, please.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to update you on where we are with our systemic instructional review support. So the 4 districts, as Tom has shared, are Mount Diablo Unified School District, Salinas Union High School District, Sacramento City Unified School District, and Oakland Unified School District. Currently, where we are is truly in an engagement process. We want to make sure, one of the things we've definitely have learned from our previous systemic reviews is that we want to spend some time really understanding what has been working well, what has been the support that's already been provided, and really understand what direction the systemic review should go. So we have 12 instructional components that we look at, but each place should be very individualized in its review. So the county has already, for example, been providing differentiated assistance. So what should we take a look at in that support and try to see how we leverage that further within our systemic review? Some of these districts have already had other types of reviews or other types of support that's been provided. For example, some of them have been core districts. How do we integrate that work into the efforts that we're about to embark in? So another thing we've definitely learned from our work is we should do some empathy conversations with different key members of the community or within the district. And so we take some time to talk with some of those key members before we dive into the actual data collection and analysis. So as in regards to Mount Diablo, we're currently in the process of engaging with the county office and the geo lead, and are prepared to have a meeting with them, it seems like, for February 18th. And so on that date, they will talk more in depth about what the review is and then what will be the next steps. We also have Salinas Union High School District, which will be having its initial meeting, engagement meeting this Friday. The county office and the geo lead will also be a part of this conversation as we begin to discuss the review. And then Sac City Unified School District, we have our meeting set with the district, the county office for February 24th to engage on the SIR. Sac City, slightly different. We've already been working with SCOE and a Sac City Unified School District in some direct support as well. So it will really be a reflecting of what direction should we be going with the SIR in particular around Sac City based on the work that has already happened. And then Oakland Unified School District, that meeting is set with the county office, the district, and CCEE for March 5th. And again, that will be when conversations about what the actual SIR will comprises of, let folks know what direction we should be going, and then begin to engage on next steps. I think one thing that's important also is that we create a letter of joint support with the county office and the geo lead to solidify this partnership in the support of the systemic instructional review. And so letters are things that we will be using to solidify that partnership. And some of those have already been signed, and we will be continuing to work on that.
Any questions from the board?
So when you have these upcoming meetings, what's the agenda for the meeting? I mean, what types of things are you going to be going through when you have these different outreach meetings in the districts?
Yeah. So one of the first things that we've started to do is do a data analysis. So we dig deeper into their data profile. But we want to share with them what we're seeing in the data and having them share back with us whether our instincts on where the data is pointing us to is accurate, what are things that we're missing in the data, and what might they already have. That gives us a deeper analysis, kind of lets us check what data already exists, for example, because very often a lot of these places already have some pretty deep data analysis. No need for CCEE to go in and ask for a lot of data from the district, for example, when that's already happened. So we try to really make sure that our data profile understanding of the district is accurate. The second thing we're doing is truly just engagement, trying to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what the systemic instructional review is, what are things that are basically, non-negotiables, and what are things that we need to design and come together on to really feel we're all going in the right direction. And that will really be of benefit to the district and to the county as they're working with them to try to support. So those would be the two. And then the last thing I would say is that we're also making the decisions on next steps. So for example, who are some immediate people that we need to spend some time with that we haven't actually spent some time with, from the superintendent to union partners, for example. So we try to get an understanding of who those folks are and then establish a timeline for when the systemic instructional review activities will occur and who are the folks in the district and the county that we should be working with as we are engaging in those kinds of data collection and analysis.
And I want to speak to that too, real briefly too. And again, this is a little bit unique, right? In particular, these districts in particular have some student subgroups in particular that they're being identified for. So our systemic instructional reviews that we've done in the districts prior have been, we overall look at these 12 issues, so these 12 various areas. We really want to try to look at those through the lens of those students, right? So that's why they're identified. The most important piece, I think, to me is with the county offices. The county offices have already been in there, right? They have those relationships with the districts, and they've already been doing some work, right? Each of these districts have been in DA for the last 3 years, and so we want to make sure that whatever we're doing actually helps in that work, right? So if they've been working with them, they've already been doing some things. So how can we make sure when we go in, can we take a closer look at that, right, on their behalf to say, we've been working with the district, we're not sure if this is getting implemented or not. Can you make sure you go there? Are there certain schools, right? In particular in Oakland and Sac City, those are large districts, right? Are there certain schools that we should go into as opposed to other schools? Are there schools that we should go into where the really good things are happening, right? Where we can take a look and go, what's going on here, right? Who have working with very similar student group, right? Where they're not having the same success, so that we can point to that success and use that as a resource, right? As we're trying to begin to do work. So I think our interest is making sure, in particular, we're on the same page, right? And we're doing this to actually support the work that's already been done. I think the key piece that too is, and then what happens afterwards, right? That's the real work. And again, that's the same thing, because what's a little bit different is we now are saying once that's done, okay, we know what's going on, good or not, right? So now what can we do to support the county office in that work? What can we do to access some of the other resources in the system of support?
Thank you. I just have a comment. I appreciate this overview. I know last time we talked about where, essentially where does DEA leave off and CCEE begin. So the level of thoughtfulness and flexibility about where each district is, and in particular from where I sit as both in a geo lead role with Mount Diablo and a DA role with OUSD, that flexibility is absolutely key, and that those conversations are happening in a context-based way is really important. And I will be interested in hearing, and I'm assuming that the non-negotiable part that you're talking about is what's defined in statute, but that actually would be good to know what is up for input and kind of, I guess, tailoring to fit the context and what is not. So
Very
just
good
as we
question,
go.
yeah. So those non-negotiable are actually things that we've learned from doing the systemic review. So for example, presenting to the board about the work that's happening and what it would all mean and what they should expect at the end of it all. One of the things that we found in Inglewood and other places is that we needed to tell that story more directly so people understand why CCE is involved in the district. What is it that they should expect from our role and our support? What are the timelines that people should expect this work to be happening? And so that's the type of things that needs to happen. Another thing is that we need to identify the right person in the district who will be working with us. So that way we know when we need to verify class schedules, for example, so we can make sure we do those classroom observations, that we know exactly who's the person who's going to be working with us. Because if not, it really delays the process from being able to complete the review. And we want to make sure that you get the information in a timely enough manner so we can start planning for next year and not feel that we waited way too long into the school year and didn't actually get the review completed. So those are the types of non-negotiables I'm talking about, are more of the things in the process that we just know are critical steps for success. That's how we're calling them in our conversations with folks, but it's the things that we've known that if we don't do it, it really becomes a challenge in the long run. It really complicates the process.
And just one quick follow-up question. So as we engage in the process, as you heard, we have our meeting coming up the first week in March. Are those things defined, or are they in writing?
Yes, they are.
Somewhere? Okay.
Yes, they are in the presentation, and we talk about them. We say, are there certain things that we should understand about coming to present to your board, for example, that we don't know about? So yes, we're very transparent about the process. I think that's the other thing, the more that we can front load with folks about what the process will include. Simple things like our district members joining us on the school visits, for example. These are the things that we figured out that we need to really be upfront about and work with the district and the county on, so that way we're all clear. But I think, again, I'm sure we're going to learn a lot from just these processes as well. So as we get clear, we're really trying to make sure we're transparent in our first meeting with folks.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I wanted to comment too. I really appreciate Karen's questions. Karen and I talked last week too, and I've sat in that seat, right? And so I know the sensitivity, right? And so in particular, what's important to us, even between now and March, right? If we need to meet with your staff and do whatever we can to answer these questions up front, right? So that you can feel comfortable for that meeting, really happy to do that, to make sure that we're we're doing this in unison, right? And so I would encourage that, and I know we've talked about that as well. I think other non-negotiables we've talked about is we're going to talk to kids, right? We're going to go to classrooms. We're going to talk to the teachers union. We're going to talk to parents, right? We're going to look at what's going on. If there's professional development that's happening, we actually want to go see it. If there's instructional leadership teams, we want to go sit in on those, right? We really need to see it and hear it, right? Otherwise, we can't just accept that it's happening, right? And so that we've been very intentional around that. And again, we just try to really feel like that just is to inform, to really help people say, well, this is what I think you said you were doing, but this is kind of what we're seeing. And this is what your folks who are doing the work are really saying, right? And this is what we saw in classrooms. So those are some examples of some of the non-negotiables.
Yes.
It's better for me to listen. It's better for us all to listen. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate what you described about really trying to create a plan based on getting to know some of the individual needs and looking at data. I think that's very helpful to make this a customized process. What I'd like to ask is, what kind of things do you envision that would be made available for these 4 districts? And I understand that you want to really build that according to data and other things, but as these districts, some of them have been in differentiated assistance and receiving all kinds of support. Some of them are also, really under extreme financial circumstances. I mean, I'm not speaking out of school here to say that the Alameda County Office of Education has literally been helping with, systems, back end, and others. And, some of these districts are having to make decisions about closing schools and structural systems, and a number of systems, including CDE, have been formally and informally working with them. And so, given where they are, what do you envision that might be available for them? And then how do you envision synchronizing with all the different partners who are providing some level of support so that we don't flood those districts and inundate, especially the ones that are a little bit more vulnerable right now? How do we do that, in a way that all the system partners who are helping can be maximized, and we don't flood a district that is in trouble and needs help? But sometimes when you need help, sometimes it's hard to even know what help to ask for when you're just trying to survive. And I know with some of those districts that they are literally working on survival strategies. So I'd like to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that we've learned in our process is there are a lot of different helpful hands, which is really great, but how do we work in a coordinated effort that we don't over-communicate too much with the district, because they're trying to obviously do the day-to-day and do the strategy work as well. So one of the things that we did do that I think will be something we'd like to continue to do as we do the work with these 4 districts is cross-agency meetings. This is where we come together and really talk about what has been happening and where areas of growth have happened, because the beauty of this work is that we actually really get clear on what is moving, what is working, while also being able to identify where things are not moving, being very transparent with each other's efforts, and knowing that we're all trying something but it may not be working. So how do we change or figure out who's the better person to start leading it in a different way, because it's important to do that, but we do it as a team. So I think that cross-agency conversation has been really important. We do a gradual release in that where we might meet more frequently as cross-agency meetings. Doesn't mean that there aren't other meetings happening in between, but it allows us as agency folks to just come together and really get clear on that. I think the other piece of that is really realizing the degree. So from a multi-tiered system of support lens, right? What are things that are just universal work that needs to happen in the district? And, there's already good work happening. We just need to just be their thought partner and help them continue, to the intensive support, where we actually need to, on the fiscal end, folks have had to actually ask people to work very directly on almost a daily basis with the district. The same approach may need to happen from an instructional lens. And I think today you'll hear from Inglewood, for example, where we've taken that much more intensive approach. But other places we might just identify a coach and support on the coach who's going to be working with the instructional team on whether it's improving, because there's a lot of good foundational work sometimes. It's just like, how do you scale? How do you move it more quickly to things where you're trying to target particular student groups and they're struggling to be able to do that, bring those kinds of professional experts. I've brought to the board before a conversation about building our Rolodex. We really work hard to find people who are extremely well-known or have excellent experience in being able to create change and be helpful support to districts in certain areas. So we'll bring those kinds of people to the table. I think also within the system of support, I think we also have to figure out whether it's a geo lead that has certain expertise, if it's another lead, like there's SELPA leads dealing with disproportionality, for example, how do we bring them to the table? Because a lot of these districts are also struggling with special education. So I think that's the way, but I do think cross-agency meetings and then agreeing that every place is different and that we're going to have to think about it from a tiered support and that we all have to put our heads together and figure out what that can look like.
Yeah, and if I can give, you'll see actually an example of that, I think, in the Inglewood presentation. I think that's a couple of examples, I think, in particular where we've been doing some of this work. In Inglewood, and I'll let them speak more specifically to it, we all started together at the table monthly, just trying to all say, let's all get together and not inundate this district and have all these separate meetings. And we all worked pretty collectively to where we got to a point and we said, all right, we don't need to meet this much, right? We've agreed on how we're going to do it, right? The LACO is leading that work. We're at LACO, we figured out where we could support them,
They brought a wraparound team, yeah.
Yeah, and you'll hear some of that today too. I know some of this. We're in Sac City, for example. They're not in fiscal. They're not officially identified as in fiscal distress. They're in a lot of fiscal distress, right? But they reached out to us a while back. We met with the county office, in particular around special education. So we put some expertise in there. We paid for that resource and put it and worked collectively with them and just did a presentation at their last board around putting a plan around how to help them in the area of special education. Oakland, even last year we reached out to Karen, right? We all know what was going on in Oakland last year with the strike and all the fiscal work too. And Karen said, give us a little bit of time, right? We've got this could actually distract us from what we're trying to do. And we said, okay, and let's wait until where that it actually could, so it wouldn't be impede kind of where they're going to. So some of this there is a little sense of urgency here because of the way our dashboard is identified, right? And so we have to kind of get in there now, but we don't want to get in there and step on toes and create issues with that. I would also tell you too, there are a lot of resources, I think, in this state that are not being accessed, right? Because I think some of them are just being developed, right? So I think there's some real opportunity there.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Carla, I want to thank you. And I know we have many other issues that are going to be coming up. I'm under the assumption that we'll talk more about the SIR in item 8 in the board workshop. We'll get an opportunity. Okay. So I think that it would be helpful for me as we go into that discussion, and maybe it's going to come up more naturally in the Inglewood conversation. For me, because I'm coming back to this process, the simple question of where did the SIR come from, is I have of interest. To what degree is the SIR going to assess any of the political dynamics that might be potential barriers for improvement? Because I think this is going to be absolutely critical, and I'm so glad you're leading it because there's such a degree of confidence and credibility with you in the system of support. But I think that's absolutely critical because as this process moves to 2.5, tier 2.5, phase 1, 2, and 3, and these two gentlemen come to a place where they're making an incredible, significant decisions about is this skill or is this will, and to what degree does the state take over. I think this process is going to continue to be highlighted, the system's going to want to see the details. Yeah. And I think so anything that you can do in these future presentations versus peppering you here and trying to get that clarity so we can move on. But I just wanted to tee that up.
I'd be happy to. I think the one thing I would just say is that, as Tom shared, the report is just one piece. The real work actually happens after that, and be happy to come back also and share what we've learned so far on how do you show progress, how do you help folks be able to really celebrate those opportunities that they are making progress, and being strong thought partners that help them to know where they're not. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the partnership is, you don't want to have a handoff to the CDE. You want CDE to be in this journey with us so that when we get to that point, it's a mutual decision. It's a collaborative decision. But I appreciate it, Carla. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the other piece that you'll see in the agenda too is I referenced this introduction to compassionate systems in schools, and so you'll see that Suji and Suji Shin and Ronnie Jones and Michelle Megar and I were able to go back. We had an invitation to go back to MIT to do some work with Peter Senge and his group. We actually were introduced to them through the leadership of the department, in particular Michael Funk and Stephanie Gregson. Michael's been doing some work around their extended learning programs for some time, and has really done some great work there. And so he invited us a while back, and we were able to go there one day with Peter's partner around that, and they reached out to us and said, we're really interested. Everybody, what I'm finding is the more and more we're out there, everybody across the country is kind of looking at what's going on here in California, right, with some real interest is, are we going to be able to make this thing work, the system of support, and not being this top-heavy system? And Senge and his group are really interested. And in particular, where they're interested in is how do people collaborate, right, and in a compassionate way to actually get the work done, right? And that mainly in those who've grown up in systems where a lot of that hasn't occurred, right? There's not been a lot of partnerships in our educational system. We all work in pretty strong silos. And so how do you do that? And they have some particular tools and things that they put in place. I think Michael and his team and has really tried to do some real work and can show how that's working. So we got to dig into that a little bit. And so we want to try to make sure that we're actually trying to use some of those resources and tools and share those as we approach this work. So I'm going to ask Ronnie Jones if Ronnie would come up. Ronnie leads our work around system of support, and her and Michelle will be doing some work with the board this afternoon. But I wanted her to just share one tool, just to give you a little bit of an idea of some of what it is that we're trying to dig into. So Ronnie?
Right, good morning. Am I on? Yeah. Ronnie Jones, Assistant Director of the System of Support. And we're actually going to be using two tools today with you. I'm going to share the iceberg with you now, and then we're going to be using a tool around creative tension this afternoon during the board study session. So that'll be the second tool that we talk about. But I've put a picture of the iceberg up here on the wall for you to take a look at. And as many of you maybe have heard at other state board meetings or maybe in your work out in the field, why aren't some of the changes that we're trying to implement sticking? Why aren't some of the changes sustainable? We might see some improvements in a district. We might see some improvements within the system in small pockets and small areas, but sometimes that doesn't stick. Sometimes we see a backslide. We see districts who seem to be on the right path, but then sometimes we just sort of lose that forward momentum about what's happening. And we could talk about a lot of the reasons why, turnover of leadership, economic issues, right? We could talk about a lot of those things. But Peter Senge and the Center for Systems Awareness has created this model around really digging deeper into the system. Many of you might also have been thinking like, yeah, this word system is thrown around a lot. And we keep talking about the need to work with systems, but what does that actually mean? And Peter comes to the table with an idea around the fact that systems are actually just people. And that, oh, thank you, Michelle. That systems are really just people. And so what we need to do is we need to figure out ways of really working with people in a compassionate way. You'll see that reflected in the state's philosophy around really working and engaging with communities and stakeholders in the system. That idea that we within the system who maybe hold leadership positions aren't solely making the decisions. We take everybody into account as we're making these decisions. And so what this tool does is this tool really helps us look at what is the event that's happening above the water? Where are we seeing maybe some conflict, or where are we seeing some things that are not working? Gaps in student data, those kinds of things. And there's a whole series of tools that we can go through with you at a later date, but really it's about looking underneath the surface, and I think Carla hit on this a little bit. We can't just look at the events, we can't just look at the dashboard and make quick decisions about what we're going to change or what we're going to do. That often backfires. So by really looking at the data, by talking with people, by understanding what's happening, we can actually get below the surface and we can understand the patterns, behavior, and dynamics. Many of you mentioned politics within school districts. Those dynamics are incredibly important when we're talking about what do we need to do to make improvements. But then even deeper than that, we also have these underlying structures. And so there are two ways to look at underlying structures according to the model. There are artifacts and mindsets, mental models, which we in California have really been calling mindsets. But artifacts is really where we tend to put a lot of time, right? We want to do a training. We want to create a policy. We created a dashboard. And so we have all of these artifacts. We have all of these things that are tangible and people can put their hands on. But why are those not really creating the change that we want to? And it's really because we haven't done what we need to tackle the mental model parts. What are the habits of mind? What are the implicit biases? What are the values and feelings that people bring to this work? And so there are many tools to get to these levels. We're very lucky that CDE has really been a great partner for us and even introduced us to some of this work. With their help, we have co-sponsored 2 introductory workshops with Peter Senge and his Center for System Awareness. After the meeting in March, we'll probably have had about 35 to 38 participants within the system of support going through this training and this workshop. And we're going to be having in-depth discussions about how we utilize these tools and bring these ideas to the table when we're working not just within differentiated assistance, but also as a team around the system of support. Many of you were asking questions. You know, how do we know that a district is getting what it needs in order to make those improvements? We're hoping that by digging in and not only understanding the systems at the district, but also understanding the systems within the system of support, that we can actually improve our ability to get services to districts that they need. And so we're really looking forward to moving this work forward, to the ongoing partnership with the Department of Education in this work, and we're really excited about many of these tools. So questions?
Thank you for the presentation. This is probably more of a comment that it's really good to see you working with the systems change that Peter Senge leads for. It's definitely something at the Alameda County Office of Education we worked with Peter on a few years ago when LCAPs were first introduced, because he and his team really felt like that was an opportunity to look at how putting together plans like this thoughtfully could actually lead to some systems change. That was the theory there, and we actually for 3 years in a row presented at with him at his, what was called, longer story, Camp Snowball.
Okay.
That was in several locations,
Right. Snowballs.
Right. Actually, okay, short story. It was they had a corollary camp for kids at the same time, and they let the kids name the camp, and they named it Snowball because they did an activity with snowballs. And so anyway, but he chose to, transition from that feeling. Like many districts in California actually participated in that prior to Michael Funk really looking at a way of having the expanded learning work take advantage of some of what Peter Senge was doing. So I think that there may even be broader, there may be things that are kind of laying dormant that folks participated in a while ago that could be built on as we move forward with some of those, tools, the iceberg, the archetypes, all of those things, the ladder of inference, and all of the things that systems thinking leads for. So just want to make you aware.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. And I guess my question as it relates to like some of this work, to what extent are we capitalizing on the work that we've already done, like through the PLNs or, the last board meeting, like the labor management initiative? And, we talk about systems change, we talk about political dynamics. We have great work. CASA was here talking about some of their work and what came out of, some of their systems change. Are we taking some of the work and some of the lessons learned from our pilots, from our PLNs, our PLXs, and the other initiatives we're involved with, and then bringing that to bear as we do some of the systems work in other areas?
Yeah, I think one of the great things about this systems work is that it relies on not only understanding what's not working in the system, but also what is working in the system. So if we can look at these examples that we've uncovered, not we, CCE, but we as a state have uncovered through the professional learning networks, through some of the other initiatives, through some of the work at CDE, then we can really start to examine the underlying structures of systems that are working. So what are the habits of mind and values and biases that we can understand from that work that we can then bring in and study with maybe some of these other systems. We've talked about, I don't know today if Suji's talking about the models of continuous improvement. It's a new initiative that we have. That we're really looking for models of where the work has actually transformed, the systems work has transformed things for students and teachers and on the ground for communities. And so that's where we really see that work fitting into this and understanding where things are working.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because I mean, I think, it's just a mindset. The system of support is not something we're waiting for. No. It already exists. It already exists, and there's already been tangible benefits in different parts of the state. And I think we don't want to just have these isolated examples, but let's take the lessons that we've learned from our work in certain areas and apply those to other areas. I mean, I think that's also part of the ongoing system. So let's be here.
I also think that one of the things we talked with Peter and his colleague Meta Bowl about was this idea that the system in California is also a loosely affiliated network. So we have some of these loose connections that we need to make tighter so that we can actually share some of that learning and make that process of sharing across the state better. Because if something is happening, say, in the North State GeoLead, we need a process and a way of taking those positive stories and communicating them with the rest of the state. And right now, it's a little clunky. We have the GeoLead meetings. We're trying our best to do that. We all know that if you put it on a website or in a binder, it kind of sits on a shelf sometimes, right? So what we're trying to do is not just find a way to share those ideas, but take those ideas and then have other people learn from them, because it may not be exactly what happened in Shasta that's applicable, say, in Kern, right? We need to take the parts that really work. And so we're really trying to work that out and figure that out right now, because in the past, people would have created a website or done a workshop or had a binder, and it only goes so far. And we're really trying to make that a better process. Great.
No, I really appreciate your presentation, and I think it's exciting because I think Carla alluded to it as well, there's not a one-size-fits-all. We really have to go in, we have to get to know the community, we have to figure out what that community needs. There are things that we know are best practices and research-based that we need to look at across our districts, but it really is those things that are under the ice that are so critical to making this work. And so I think going forward, I'd just like to hear about the other stakeholders in the community, other than the educational professionals, the parents, and the students, because each of these is also situated within a unique community that has its own values and can contribute to, if you have some sort of collective impact work, helping move that system as well. So be curious to know what we're looking at with that.
Yeah, I think of this work as concentric circles. We're working with sort of this inside circle right now, and then really working with them to plan how we move this work out to some of these other circles and these other communities. And so we have been using some of the work with our stakeholder planning group that we meet with several times a year. The system of support meets with a broad range of stakeholders from PTA and CTA and some of the advocacy groups, and we bring them together. And at our last meeting, we used some of these tools with them during that meeting. And so we hope to continue that work to move it out in that concentric circle way.
The other thing I want to hear about more is the building capacity, so people are able to actually own that, because it's at a tertiary level now. How does it take roots? And then one of the things that Carla said struck me, and it strikes me about this as well, is that we have to have a non-negotiable to remind people to communicate this work. Right. And so if that's the case, then how do we really build capacity within the organization so that they're communicating the change and what's happening with that system?
Yeah, I think those are in the building stages, and we can come back to you later with a more fully formed plan. As Tom said, we just went to MIT in January, so I think that we're working our way towards that. But I do think that this idea of, what are the enabling conditions and what are the steps for success that really allow us to do that? One of the things that we are very interested in, and we every other week, CDE, CCEE, and State Board have collaborative meetings around this. And one of the things that we're working really hard to do is to not make top-down decisions where we're telling people what the non-negotiables are, but we're working with them to uncover what we can all agree are the non-negotiables. What are those steps for success that we all need to agree on so that we can actually move this work forward? So that's really the direction we're going in. Great, thanks.
Ronnie, thank you. And I just can't underscore enough the comments from Board Member Lyon and Board Member Monroe and Board Member Sabranti. I think what people forget is we're building the plane as we're flying it. And we're dealing with the most complicated system probably in the nation when one of our districts has more students than most states have people.
Right.
So I mean, getting to the underbelly of an organization and helping it move from this facade of co-laboring that they call collaboration to a place of collaboration where each department has to actually give up something they want to position kids first is really a complex task.
Yeah.
And so I'm really interested in this conversation as we go forward. And I know our county offices have been fighting through this. When you get to the root cause, and it's a mindset issue, that's incredibly challenging. Yeah. So I appreciate it, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, Ronnie, too. And this leads me to the last part of the report, too. I put in there some reports. A lot has happened in this last year, PACE in particular, right? I know Michael Fullen's group, too. There have been a lot of reports that have come out in this last year giving us information on what's working and what's not working and where we should be thinking about moving forward, right? And so I think it's actually time to take some stock, right, and go, okay, do we just stay the path, or what do we need to do to shift? And there's research. People are telling us that there's some things that aren't working, right, and there's some things we need to do better. What really struck me with Peter, and we had lunch with him and talked with him too, and he would say, and specifically around what Ronnie just shared is, as we approached and we built the system of support, we didn't really focus in the beginning around mindsets, right? We went right to artifacts, right? We created some things around a concept or a construct of people really working together collectively, right? And then we had some data, and the very first door for many people was LCAP and then DA, right? That's kind of really, and for most districts, Sandy can tell me if I'm correct, that's been the only door, right? So this other idea, right, of all these new resources and who's the CCEE and how do you work with them and what's this role and all that stuff and what's the real construct around this and mindsets and, right, and is it really something different? Or are we really going to aren't we going to go back to something happening to me? Am I going to get punished if I don't do well, right? There's still that huge mindset because that's all we've ever experienced, right? And that's the world we've grown up in. And Peter would say, we didn't really put any focus there. We went right to the artifacts, and now we're all trying to kind of shift that. At the same time, new resources are being introduced, right? Again, people not really understanding what they are. What's the concept around CSLA? It's different than the old concept. People don't know what that is yet, right? What's the point of these resources, right? How are we going to access them, right? So there's, and again, that's the plane as we're building it. But part of it is that I do think we have to stop and really start to help make connections for people, right? To really start to understand what is this construct to go, okay. And we, yesterday at our advisory meeting, that we had some talk with the districts around that and going, okay, it's starting to make a little bit of sense for me, right? How do I get to access that resource now? Who gets to go to CSLA? How do I do it? What if my data tells me this? Could we survey the districts? Is there a way to do something, right? Everybody's having all those questions, and we're going, yeah, that's all of what we kind of have to figure out. So we're a little bit behind the 8 ball, I think, in regards to that, because we approached it in a very similar way that we had. Not that what we tried to do in the construct and it wasn't the right thing to do, but we kind of approached it through that lens. And so I would just encourage the board too to be reading these things. That's what we read everything. We're going to all these things, and we're really trying to be thoughtful about how do we start to shift that, right, and use some of the research to help us in that too. So thank you. That's the end of my report.
That's a great report. There's so many questions, and you guys are doing such a great job, so appreciate Carla and Ronnie again. Thank you for the information you provided. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Any general public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll move forward to item 7, which we moved up to item 5. And want to welcome the spotlight on our partnership with Inglewood Unified School District. We're all very excited to hear about the work, and we appreciate you being here. And this is an information and discussion item led by Carla Estrada.
Thank you, board members. I'm very pleased to be able to have the Inglewood team here who is really working together to support students, support the community, and really move the district forward in attaining its vision. I think although we have some team members here, I think it's also important to note that there's a lot of folks that really work with this team to support them, and Dr. Torres will share more about that in her presentation. But just know that although not everybody is here, know that there's a lot of important and very special folks back in Inglewood and beyond that have been really helping. So today the folks will be presenting. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Torres, who is the County Administrator for Inglewood Unified School District. And we also have Megan Locklear, who's also the Director for LA County Office of Education and serves in the capacity to support around special education. So she'll give you an update on that. And then we also have Sandra Naranjo, who is a coordinator with Los Angeles County Office of Education, who also supports in particular around data and research and quality. And so, again, we are very pleased to be able to have folks who are doing the very heavy lifting and heavy work in Inglewood here with us today. So our time together will really be giving you some of that background on Inglewood Unified School District, how the county has been working and supporting AB 1840 and how and the reason why the county has been that lead support for them. Also discussing the partnership with CCEE and others, identifying priority areas. We'd like to highlight for you where are the key areas we've been focused on, what's the work that's been happening, and the progress being made there. Highlight some successes from the partnership. I think as you hear our presentation, you'll also hear a lot of lessons learned. Inglewood was very much our first place as an organization to support. It was one of my first responsibilities working in this capacity, and definitely we've had some lessons learned that serve us as we continue to do the work, and as well as next steps. And I'm very excited also to be able to end with a wonderful video from Inglewood Unified to really show you and solidify where the vision and direction of Inglewood is. And so with that, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Torres.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so
The gifts, by the way.
Of course. I hope that you enjoy them. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you so much for all of the support that you provide to our amazing district. And today, as Dr. Estrada mentioned, we're going to provide you with an overview of our progress, our priority areas, and also our success. And so I just wanted to give you some background information on our district. As you may know, Inglewood Unified School District has been in state receivership for over 7 years. And so during this time, we've had 7 state-appointed administrators. So I have the honor to serve as the new county administrator. I was appointed in November. But previously, I was part of the Los Angeles County Office of Education as a deputy superintendent. And when AB 1840 passed in September of 2018, I was asked by my superintendent if I would be willing to serve as the lead in supporting the district. And I said, yes, of course. And so I have been with the district for over a year now, and I'm happy to report that we continue to make progress. We do face a lot of challenges. We currently operate 17 schools. Since the 2010-11 school year, we've actually seen a decline in student enrollment, and this is actually, we see the decline after the district went into state receivership. So in 2010-11, just to give you some context, our student enrollment was over 13,000. We're currently at 8,459. And so in your packets, we've provided you with a lot of information, but if you could please reference the first handout, which is our at a glance. It provides you with some information with regards to our district. And so approximately 85% of our student population is considered to be socioeconomically disadvantaged. 33.5% of our students are classified as English learners. 63% of our students are Latino, 34% of our students are Black. And we actually have the honor of working with Dr. Pedro Noguera because when we started to really support the district, we realized that we were not going to be able to see any significant improvements in the district if we didn't partner with researchers in education, but also with critical partners like the CCEE. And so what I've done is provided you with a handout. Beyond the Schoolhouse Policy Report is a report that we are utilizing just to really understand the inequities in education, but specifically in our community. And so some of the highlights of the report include the fact that Inglewood has the highest proportion of Black students, 40.1%. And so what the research demonstrates is that these communities are under-resourced, underfunded. Some of the other key findings include the academic performance and health are highly correlated with where a child lives. And that's something that we can see on a daily basis. Most schools with high concentration of Black students have limited resources. Some of the recommendations include expanding funding for full-service community schools to support the health, mental health, and dental needs of our students, specifically within the school setting. There's also a call to action with regards to special education, and we're going to provide you an update on special education in Inglewood. But it talks about the need for increasing federal funding to support the growing special education costs and to fully fund IDEA. And so we're honored to work with Dr. Noguera, who's really helping us to elevate the work, but also to really understand the needs of our community, of our district, and we continue to advocate for additional resources because we do believe that these inequities are a social justice issue. And so we know that we can't do this work alone. As I mentioned, we've been in state receivership for over 7 years, and so we have an amazing team that has come together around a unified vision for turning the district around. And so the Inglewood Unified School District has amazing staff. We have employees that have been with our district for over 30 years. They grew up in our community, they went to our schools, and they believe in our district. But unfortunately, because we've been in state receivership and we've seen a decline in enrollment, a lot of people have lost hope in our district. And so part of my strategy is to surround our district with partners, with love, and to instill hope once again. The Los Angeles County Office of Education has been an amazing support, and as I mentioned, I was a lead in supporting the district. And our vision at the County Office of Education was to ensure that we provided resources and supports to the district. And so some of these positions are funded through the support of CCEE, and we thank you for partnering with us. But we knew that we needed to have an expert team dedicate their time on a full-time basis to support the district. And so I'm going to share the priority areas that we have identified. And what we strategically did is we hired experts in these areas to help us to build capacity, to rebuild the infrastructure of the district, and to build those systems of support. The California Department of Education has been instrumental in providing technical assistance and expertise around special education. Our amazing State Superintendent of Public Instruction has visited us at the district on several occasions to offer his support and expertise, and he's also helped to lead the Community Schools Initiative, which we now benefit from. And so I'm happy to report that Morningside High School has a community schools program that we have just implemented this school year. And so I just wanted to thank you, Superintendent, for your ongoing support and vision. And so through this community school center, we're going to be able to provide health education, mental health support, substance abuse preventative services, and other physical exams and services that our families need. The Department of Finance has been really instrumental in helping us with budget and finance. And if we have questions about AB 1840 and compliance requirements, we know that we can count on the Department of Finance. And the CCEE has been amazing since the very beginning. And I work closely with Carla, and I see her as a sister. I call her when I have questions or concerns. We meet regularly, and she's been awesome to work with. And so CCEE has been really instrumental in helping to provide technical assistance and expertise, serving as a thought partner, helping with supporting our special education initiatives, also helping to launch our attendance campaign. And so whenever we need some additional support, I know that I can always count on all of you. So thank you for that. FICMAT is one of our partners as well. And we work closely with Mike Fine. And although we're audited every year by FICMAT, I see FICMAT as a partner because we need to work together to ensure that we implement the recommendations from FICMAT. And so I know that I can always text or call Mike Fine, and he's always available to help. Our labor partners are amazing. We have a classified and certificated union, and we've been working with them since the very beginning. And I think that this is why we've been so successful, is that we have to rebuild trust. And so our labor partners are with us every step of the way. And so just to give you some background on the LACO support, as I had mentioned, the oversight of Inglewood Unified School District shifted from the California Department of Education to the Los Angeles County Office of Education when AB 1840 passed September of 2018. And so when we reviewed the FICMAT reports and we go 7 years back, we knew that there were recommendations that we could really start to strategically focus on immediately. And so what we ended up doing is we developed a unique support model of experts helping us to stabilize a district. I wanted to call your attention to one of the handouts that we've provided you with. It is a summary of our progress, and this is the newest version. It's January 2020. It's your third attachment. This provides you with a summary of our progress since November. In the back, you'll have an opportunity to read about the LACO support team. So we have 10 full-time employees from the Los Angeles County Office of Education that work directly with me at Inglewood Unified School District. And so I do believe that this unique support model of a County Office of Education really coming in strategically to support a district in need will become a state and national model for supporting districts in the future. And so together as a unified team, we looked at the FICMAT report. We reviewed with Carla and team the CCEE, Systemic Instructional Reviews. We also looked at AB 1840 requirements, and we developed a comprehensive action plan with all of the partners that I've just mentioned. And so that has been extremely helpful in our success.
So I'm just going to highlight some of our partnership, how in particular in what ways CC has been supporting. I think as Dr. Torres highlighted, we definitely serve as a thought partner in collaborating with the different agencies to make sure, to what Superintendent brought up earlier, that we're not overwhelming the district with so much support and not enough communication happening between all of us to make sure that that support is targeted, but also to just leverage where the right supports from the right agency makes more sense. So for example, from CDE, we'll have Lisa Stye from Kristen Wright's office and the special education office be our thought partner around what is going on from a compliance lens, where we know Inglewood has needed support in the past, so we can make sure that all necessary activities are met in an appropriate timeline. And Meg will talk more about that in a second. But we also do it through a lens of continuous improvement cycles. I think one of the things that we've definitely learned from our work has been short cycles are much better to work through with districts. Let's identify some key things based on the action plan that will leverage and address a variety of areas of need, but keeps us focused for sometimes a couple weeks to a couple months, but that we see something to a finish line with quality and then move on to the next thing. We know there's always going to be other things happening, but how do we stay focused as a team and then use all the different resources to determine who's the best person to be that thought partner? And so there's many a time where FICMAT might be working with CCEE, or FICMAT might be working with the LACO team to work through certain things because they're the better partnership to work through that. So, but the focusing on short cycles seem to be really working really well, and so we will continue to be a partner in that way. The other is invest in the right kinds of strategic efforts, because one of the things we've also found as we've worked with districts is some of those foundational needs are not have not been met, and so whether it's because of fiscal reasons that things have had to be put aside, or just the person who led that work is no longer there, how do you start to rebuild that, knowing that the current state of the district is what it is? That's not going to change. And so we really look at it from short-term investments that will have the longest term impact, and also the degree of intensity, as I shared. Is it something that we're just doing to universally help, and Dr. Torres will talk more about that, or to something where it's more intensive, which Sandra and Meg serve as that kind of lens. So I just wanted to highlight what exactly we've been doing.
Okay. Thank you. So I talked about the fact that we work together to develop this comprehensive action plan. We have included all of our stakeholders, including labor partners, to make sure that we identify the areas of need and identify specific strategies based on recommendations from FICMAT, our instructional review, and also AB 1840. So the CCEE and LACO support teams work really closely together to ensure that we're making progress. And so this technical support has been extremely critical to our success. And so these are the 5 areas that we identified. And when we looked at all of the different reports that we had at hand, the instructional review, also FICMAT, AB 1840, the strategic plan from the district, we identified some critical areas that we wanted to focus on. And the first one was around AB 1840. And so with AB 1840, there are specific compliance requirements that we have to adhere to in order to be eligible for funding from the state. And so these include completing comprehensive operational reviews. And so it's looking at our staffing ratios in the district, but also comparing those to similar sized districts in the area. We also are responsible for ensuring that we have a facilities consolidation closure plan, and that's something that we continue to make progress on. We had to certify as positive or qualified, and we were able to certify as qualified. And so I'm happy to report that we're eligible to receive the $3.6 million in allocation in the 2019-2020 school year, which was at that time up to 75% of the operating deficit for the district. I do want to state that although we believe that these funds are helpful to the district, when we have to cut between $10 to $14 million while still consolidating and closing schools, the funds through 1840 are just not merely enough to stabilize our district. And so we continue to advocate for additional funds. And so we are making progress with our facilities consolidation closure plan. We have our first planned elementary school closure scheduled for the end of this school year. We are closing Woodworth Elementary School and Monroe Middle School, which is right next to Woodworth Elementary School, will now serve as a TK through 8 model. And we're closing Woodworth, so all of our students from Woodworth will now go to Monroe TK through 8. Also, we are looking at unique opportunities to generate revenue for our district on a long-term basis. And so knowing that the Inglewood community is being gentrified right now at this point in time because of the stadiums being built, our families have to leave the community that they love. So we wanted to look at unique opportunities to ensure that we instill hope again in our families. And so we recently released an RFQ, a request for developer qualifications, and I provided you with a copy of our map here. This is the 4th attachment. So we have 22.6 acres of land between Woodworth, Monroe, Morningside High School, and we have released our RFQ. This was done last week, and we are asking developers to provide us with proposals, and we're very interested in workforce housing, low-income housing, and so that's something that we're pursuing. And this will be a long-term lease for the district, so we're not planning to sell that property because we want to make sure that we start to rebuild our revenue stream. We're also working with a demographer as we continue to look at all of our facilities and thinking about the next school or schools closures, that we look at enrollment rates. We're also looking at birth rates. We're looking at, just ensuring that we identify the properties that we could either consolidate or close, and looking at data from our demographer. In terms of budget and business operations, we were able to meet the 3% reserve level that is required. But one of the, just issues that we continue to face, the challenges, I should say, is that, we're losing still between 300 to 400 students a year. And so and on top of that, I should say that parents are seeking a permit outside of the district because they're interested in specialized programs for their students. And so I'll talk a little bit more about how we're marketing and promoting and being very intentional about the services that we offer at our schools. And so we were able to meet our reserve levels. We're still cutting, but our special education costs continue to increase. And so right now we currently receive about $6 million from the state for special education, and we have to invest $38 million from our unrestricted budget for special education services. And so this is a challenge for us because in our district, 18% of our students receive special education services. And when we compare it to the state is at 12.8%. In addition to that, 19% of our special education students qualify for services that are identified as autistic compared to 15% statewide. And so our, the challenge is that we don't have enough funds to support the special education program at this time, and so we're taking from our general fund dollars to offset those costs. And so in terms of instruction, we have been extremely intentional with the support of CCEE and really helping us to develop a theory of action around our instructional program. And so our theory of action really talks about having a common curriculum, strong professional development and coaching for all of our teachers and administrators, also using common assessments, and using data to drive all of our instructional strategies. And so this is something new with the support of CCEE. We're very intentional in focusing on pupil achievement. The lowest scoring area within the FCMAT report, we knew that we had to do something immediately. And so these are some of the improvements and changes that we've been able to make in our instructional program. And special education is Megan Locklear.
Hi, good morning. I'm Meg Locklear. So grateful to be here today to talk to you about our wonderful district in Inglewood, and so grateful for the opportunity. So thank you, CCEE, for allowing me to be a part of this amazing team. So I was able to join the Inglewood team through LACO in August of this year, so I'm a new team member. And one of our first challenges was addressing the CDE corrective action. Unfortunately, because we are not in the past finished our corrective actions, we get these reviews annually. So this year we had 203 individual corrective actions and 159 district-wide corrective actions. So we were able to, by November 13th, train every staff at every school in special education, both general education and special education. So that was a wonderful opportunity. We were out on every Tuesday at the faculty meeting, so that was a great start. And then as far as the 203 individual corrective actions, we held a lot of IEPs, but it was great. We were able to really work with the staff and use it as job-embedded professional development on compliance issues. So we have 3 outstanding items from all of that. 2 of them are compensatory time, and we just haven't been able to make up the compensatory time yet. I mean, we're in progress, but there were a lot of hours, so we're in progress, and we have 1 health assessment. So we should get done. We're hoping not to have a review this year, but we'll be ready if we are. Also, our big focus on compliance, so we've been refining this IEP tracking system. So every week we hold meetings with our program specialists. They do a Google form where they review all of their schools. They report any overdue, upcoming tries, annuals, and then if they're having any difficulty, we brainstorm as a group how we can support. We've been really working with our program specialists about getting out into the community. So if we're not able to get IEPs back, going and doing home visits. We really are seeing that connection with our families is really important in this process. Speaking of that, we have a LACO legal counsel, Jennifer Chamberlain, who has joined the team, and she has developed an informal dispute resolution process that we're just about to roll out. We know that people don't usually sue if they have good relationships and they believe that you are trying your best. And so we really want to form those connections with our community. So this new process, we will invite our parents. If we see during an IEP meeting that there is some discrepancy, that we invite them into this process. We're partnering with the SELPA to be the external review board. So if there's a discrepancy with the assessment reports, so they're going to review the reports and provide feedback. So really trying to use our resources that we have in the area. So we're excited for that. And contracted services. They are destroying our budget. And so we are really keeping an eye just on the actual services, but the bigger picture is we need to get rid of the contracts. We need to develop our teams within Inglewood. So we are starting this year with our behavior support team. And so we are excited. We are in the process of developing job descriptions for behaviorists, one-to-one behaviorists, which we haven't had in the past. We've been working with our CalPro members to develop that job description, and our goal is to have 23 behaviorists in place for our behavior-based classrooms for next year. Hopefully, eventually, we have 138 contracted behaviorists, so our goal is to replace all of them. And then we'll also start with our own BCBA. So we're looking to also work at that job description. Haven't decided yet if it'll be classified management or a certificated TOSA position, so working with our union partners on that. And then they will start to provide the training so that we can have our behavior team in place. And hopefully that will help with our contracted services. Thank you. Yeah.
Good morning. Sorry. Thank you for allowing me to come in here and let you know about the great work that we're doing. I get to speak about data. Makes me very happy. And my name is Sandra Naranjo, and I'm part of the LACO support team focusing, of course, on data. The LACO data team, overall, there's two of us, is assessing multiple departments in their data needs, which align with the FCMAT recommendations. As we saw, data and data analysis and information is mentioned over 500 times in the FCMAT report. Realize how fundamental it is to implementing any kind of recommendations and support for Inglewood Unified, and we really took a very in-depth approach to understanding what the data needs are and what's actually happening from all level of stakeholders, from whether it is IT union members and also district personnel and school sites, and really understanding the full range of support that they need and what their processes and practices are currently taking place, and being able to understand the full gamut of what it is to use data, consume data from multiple perspectives. And one of the biggest factors that you talked about, changing culture, is understanding the role of data and the culture around data. And one of our primary focuses and concerns was how is data viewed and how is it consumed by all individuals within the school district, and whose responsibilities is it for ensuring that data is accurate, that we have data hygiene, that it is representative of what it is that is measuring, and how is it being used, and ensuring that what is there is supported by all individuals and how it's used by all. And that was essentially what will take time. But once we reset and say data is all of ours, and ensuring that schools, sites see themselves as the subject matter experts in regards to their students and their data. That's been a big shift for us, is really saying you're the ones that bring us the data, and we're the ones that help make you understand it, or help you understand what it is that's happening. And it included bringing in folks who actually process the student information to principals and directors from in the entire district. And so that was definitely different. And we hope that by taking that kind of full approach, there's a change in culture. It will take time, but that's one of the first things that we did. And we also focus on ensuring that there's a close relationship between information technology and student support services, as well as education services. There's a disconnect in understanding the role of IT and the role of ed services overall in many districts. And they feel that IT should know what the data is, and they're not really the subject matter experts in regards to student information and what it is that the data is telling us, such as a database administrator. So that's something that we've also discovered. And we developed many tools, or a few tools, to talk about just data overall, how a district is doing, because that was another element that we saw was missing. So you'll see in your packet these two profiles that we developed, the at a glance and for special education as well. This was something that wasn't done before and isn't really readily available. So the use of data is not very intensive. And so we wanted to be focused on this is how our district is doing overall, and then this is how we're doing in regards to special education. We hope to be able to provide more tools for schools to use specifically in regards to where we are and where we want to go, not only just in assessments, but also in regards to the metrics. How are they doing? How are they being held accountable? How are they doing in regards to LCAP? And being mindful of what elements are necessary to be able to guide the process along the way. And so that's really fundamental in regards to data overall. And the last area of support we're focusing also is in special education. Who are our students? What services are they being provided? How many aides and supports do we have? We have 135. Should we have 135? Are they looking at their IEPs? Are they keeping track of this? So these are all the questions that we've been focusing on as a team in regards to student education and ESY support. Who is going to be participating in ESY at the end of the year? And lastly, we're also creating community maps, which you'll see in the PowerPoint, in regards to resources. Inglewood is a very rich community, but no one really knows, and we all work in silos. So we're trying to bring all of that information together and have an understanding of this particular school, who's around me that can provide that support, and what organization can help me in building that type of resource mapping for including our community school site. That's one of the areas that we're focusing on is Morningside. Who are the mental health support providers? Who are our organizations of faith? Who are our tutoring services? So when our referral services actually happen, we know who's around there and who we can provide support for, who we can go to provide support, and who are we going to need from our community to really engage in the work that's happening overall, and how can we together move this district forward. So we're working in different areas, and it's exciting work. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to give the board a heads up, I think what we'll do is we'll continue. We take a break, but before that, I know Stephanie's here. We'll do her swearing in following this presentation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight some of the additional successes in the Inglewood Unified School District. As I mentioned, we partnered with CCEE around professional development. Last summer was the first time that the district provided like a summer institute for our teachers, and this was through a partnership with CCEE, so we're really grateful for that. We also knew that we needed to do a better job of communicating and marketing the good work happening in our district, and so we formed a marketing committee comprised of parents, a student, our labor partners, and district staff to really identify strategies for marketing the work that is happening in our district and the progress that we're making. Something huge for us is that we developed an online incident reporting system, and so previously if there was a crisis at a school, there was no way to communicate that that was happening. And so we do have an online system now with our policies and procedures in place to be able to do that immediately. Also, I had mentioned earlier that we launched an attendance campaign. It is called Every Student Every Day, and we ended up putting together a poster contest for all of our students. And right here, you're going to see a preview of one of them. This was the winner but it was really to ensure that everybody got involved as it relates to understanding the importance of daily school attendance. And so we look at attendance data, we look at all of our data on a regular basis to ensure that we identify students that need additional support. And so this poster right here was created by one of our amazing elementary school students, and I love what it says. It says, with heart and helping hands, a child can accomplish anything. Okay, so our next steps is that we're going to continue with our professional development program for all of our staff. And as Megan mentioned, we are focusing on behavior supports and special education. We continue to provide our principals with professional learning opportunities, including our instructional coaches and teachers. We're really looking at our assessments, making sure that we align them to the curriculum. That's something that we've been doing intentionally this school year, and also looking at data to drive all of our strategies. And so I believe that as partners, we're making a difference. We can't do this work alone. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your ongoing support. Superintendent Thurman, thank you. You're amazing, and we look forward to continuing the work together. Before we end, just wanted to show you a brief video, if that's okay. This is a video that one of our amazing students groups put together. We, through our marketing efforts, identified the need to engage our students and ensure that we start to really highlight our success. And so Robin Charles is one of our teachers at Morningside High School, and she is leading our media arts and entertainment program. And so she worked with our students to create this video. Click. All right. Enjoy.
I want to talk to you about today's Inglewood Unified School District. We are more than the Inglewood Unified of yesterday.
All the teachers in the school are great.
I feel like the teachers really care about our education. It feels like we're a family.
And they really help you to succeed in class. I am learning about financial literacy, simple interest. When I'm older as an adult, maybe I want to go into the financial world, and maybe I might have to make stocks or bonds or mutual funds.
Like, I get to build, I get to contract things, I get to innovate things, I get to be a part of a team that we design and we code.
I also have all honors classes, and I love my classes.
We're going to work like this, and that's how everything's going to be solved, and that's how we're going to do this. Because we have goals, and we're going to meet these goals by doing A, B, C, D.
Like, I literally just want to learn. I have the hunger and desire to learn.
As everybody knows, it's the city of champions. So I always take that with me wherever I go. I always see myself as being a champion, and I'll perform in whatever I do to the best of my abilities.
More of us are graduating.
More of us are going to college.
We are innovating.
We're exploring. We're leading.
We're dreaming. And we're achieving.
And we're creating.
Without just take our word for it.
Thank you.
Whew, that was a lot. Thank you so much. I know we have probably comments and questions from the board, so I'll turn it over. Any comments and questions from the board? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Team Inglewood. We are Inglewood. And I think the video sums up so many of the great themes that should be shared, that we are communities that are more than how people define us. And I think you all have articulated that. I want to congratulate you, Dr. Torres, on your appointment and also the vision that you are providing into your entire team. My guess is, as you pointed out to us, at the beginning of the decline, and it's a concurrent occurrence with going into receivership, and then some of the other factors that have happened, all the schools and charter schools and others that have opened all around, all these factors all at once. To me, I suspect that people lost hope and that they thought, well, I better get going. And I think that you are restoring hope through the vision that you have and through the very hard work that you all have done with all those corrective actions and making sure everyone's getting professional development. Most school districts cannot say that. So I'm gonna brag on y'all a little bit and love on you a little bit because I believe in being strength-based. I know you do too because you're a social worker. And so, you know, I just think that it seems to me that your experience is like that of many other districts because enrollment is down everywhere. Districts are getting smaller. That is very difficult, but I think that the message has to get communicated that while we may get smaller, we get better. And that when we get better, people make choices about where they want to be and that there are great things happening. And I hope your marketing is able to get directly to parents. I don't know if you have parent engagement kind of processes, but I just think that parents need to hear that. You know, your experience with special education is eye-popping in terms of the expense when all these schools that have opened up around you. But if you look at their enrollment, they don't have the level of students in special education that you do. And so there's some conversations and factors and forces that people will miss, right, if they're not in the weeds about it. But I just think that if you can make that message of hope articulated, I think you're in a great place. So I want to commend you. I want to ask 3 questions. The larger question doesn't need an answer today. The larger question is an all-day, everyday question. What help can we provide for you? And that's through this context, and that's through the CDE context, and any other context. That's an ongoing question. And then I would like to ask a question about your informal dispute resolution process. I think a lot of districts have expressed interest in how to do this differently. Some have already shown the way that when they're actually having conversations about what's in the best interest of a student who has an IEP, that's a better way to go than going through a litigious process. And so I'd like to understand a little bit, and if it's okay to say if it's just at the beginning and you're just setting it up, that's fine. But I wanted to know what is the framework through which, how you're setting that up, and then about your attendance campaign, and you know, what was the impact, if you know yet, and if you're still measuring it, that's fine. And then just curious about how you're set up for your attendance work, because, you know, sadly, most of our districts don't have outreach workers who can work with young people's families to help them work through whatever the barriers are that keep them from coming to school. Some districts don't even have an attendance clerk. And we know that these are just some of the best practices that make sense to address attendance. So I'm interested in how your structure is around your attendance programs, if you know the impact yet on the campaign, and if not, it's fine that it's underway. And then just whatever you can share about how you're setting up your informal dispute resolution process. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I will speak about the informal dispute resolution, and it has not started yet. We have just finished our documents, all of the forms, so that's been the first piece. But before that, we really are encouraging decisions to be made at the IEP team level. So we really are working hard with our teams to really understand the role of the parents. That even though we might be the educational experts on the team, the parents are the experts in their children. And so we really want to work collaboratively together in that process. We are starting our first Special Education Advisory Committee meeting on the 18th. So we will have our first special ed parent meeting, and so it'll be monthly. We're hoping not just parents of students with disabilities, but all parents will join. But that will be our first informational session. Just what is special ed? We're here because, again, we think the relationships are important, transparency is important, access is important. So if we have a breakdown and we're not able to come to a decision that we all agree upon in an IEP meeting, the informal dispute resolution process would be offered as opposed to mediation or formal due process. We have forms for the parents to fill out that would first go through what their area of discrepancy or dispute was. There's a space for the school to also apply in the ways that they try to mitigate the circumstances to work collaboratively together. And then we have a panel that informal dispute form will go to that includes members of the school district as well as the SELPA. We do have an ADR specialist, Jason Harper, who is contracted with the SELPA, but who is an independent body who provides mediation services. We've also reached out to the SELPA to see if there was a possibility that Mr. Harper could be the ongoing person, as a part of that committee. So also using an outside neutral party for mediation. And from there, if we're not able to come to a decision, then of course the parents have the right to move to a formal due process, but hoping to be able to work collaboratively together.
That's helpful. We have been hearing from some districts who have found this very process to get down to what is it that families really need in a way that is actually manageable within the costs of special education. I am curious about your cost. I assumed that a lot of it was litigation, but I shouldn't assume. Maybe you can say what the other needs, priority needs that you see within your special education programs.
The biggest cost of the $8 million cost, outside of just salaries, are the contracts. So unfortunately, we have all of our speech and language pathologists are contracted, all of our occupational therapists are contracted, some of our psychologists are contracted, all of our behaviorists are contracted, our instructional aides are contracted, as well as transportation services, which transportation is a $2 million budget item as well. So it's our contracts and needing to build internal staff. Unfortunately, we're not competitive when it comes to salaries, and that's the biggest problem that we face. When it comes to the certificated and the licensed positions, we just can't compete with the other districts. And I'll tell you, a number of those corrective actions are from our contracted partners. They don't have the same buy-in to our community, the same training level, the same level of commitment that our staff members have. And so that's been a really difficult process to try to chase down all of these agencies for compliance purposes. So, we have all of these issues that we need to address on the front end, but the biggest issue for us is to build the capacity of our staff. Just as the state, this one. Just as we've been changing state administrators and now county administrators, we've had the same turnover in our executive director of special education. So in the previous 5 years, there were 5 different executive directors. So there hasn't been any continuity as far as programming, as far as support, training. As soon as somebody comes in, they start looking for the next job. And so we've been really lucky. We've had Dr. Carter for almost 2 years now. So in April, we'll hit her 2-year mark, and that's the longest that we've had an executive director. And I get the honor of working with Dr. Carter every day. I was previously in the same SELPA in my previous position, so I've been able to, I know Dr. Carter, I know our support staff in the SELPA, so that's been really helpful as a part of this process.
Thanks. We've heard the issue of competitive salaries from a number of districts, and I've had the opportunity to meet a number of your staff. They have been incredible advocates, let's just say it that way, and letting us know some of the needs that you have. But what's also been powerful, not just in special education, I would say across the board, is that many of them come from the community and are committed to the community. And I think your district has also demonstrated something that many of our districts need, a way to diversify the workforce and to have educators who reflect the diversity of the many students that we serve. And so I guess the state budget this year, we're going to hear a presentation on it. There are a lot of things in the state budget that I think are envisioned just for communities like Inglewood, how to strengthen professional development, how to have conversations about community schools and other types of support programs. I guess I would just say, as you're building hope, if you can hang on as these things start to roll out, and we'd love to work with you to help your experience drive how they get implemented. Because to me, there's nothing worse than creating things and then having them be implemented in a way that doesn't meet the needs of our end users, our districts, and the people and the students that they serve. And so more to follow. We're happy to talk with you more and offline about the kinds of challenges that you're working through in special education and see if we might be able to be of any help.
I would love that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question about the attendance.
Just about how you're set up, if you've seen any impact yet from the campaign, and
Overall, okay. The attendance campaign is spearheaded by the Director of Student Support Services, and part of the initial push was ensuring that data accountability and data entry was accurate, and ensuring that it was done every day and by a certain time. So there are now daily reports on submittal being generated for all the schools. They get disseminated to all levels, including the principals. We're utilizing the attendance profiles that were created. You should have a copy of that, and those get generated every month, ensuring that schools know and principals know how their attendance rates are on a monthly basis, and then also in comparison to last year. They'll also have chronic absence rates and they also get a ADA loss. So how much money are they losing by not focusing on attendance, or basically on student attendance? And we're also, the next step is utilizing our community liaisons to be more of an integral part of the attendance process overall, the ones that we do have available. And because they know their students, they know their schools, so how do we leverage that resource overall? Since there aren't very many positions who focus on attendance or have an attendance clerk, how do we focus the community liaisons and engage them in the attendance process, because they know the schools, they know the community, and leveraging that resource overall. So really it's about what do we use right now that we have available, and what information do they need to be able to move forward and make decisions based on that. So the at a glance, you'll see they'll get this is just an example of how we focus on attendance every month, and we have the chronic absence rate is 18.5% in comparison to last year at this time. And the attendance rate has also gone up 0.4%, but we're still working at it. We know that there's days that they come to school. Mondays and Fridays are the worst days, and there's holidays and so forth. So also ensuring that schools have some kind of strategy in place to be able to focus on those particular days, the high absence rate days throughout, keeping parents informed, letting them know, hey, we're coming back this day. So it's really a whole community, whole child, and all in stakeholders' view of attendance. And then we develop these attendance profiles that are monthly. And like I mentioned, they have chronic absence rate, the tracking, essentially where they're at by the time of the year. So they know that if I'm a chronic absence by this time of the year, if I've had this many absences. And so really keeping parents informed and ensuring that they have the knowledge to be able to say, oh, I've missed this many days, or my kid has missed this many days. And principals, oh, this is where we're at, and this is where we're getting measured against. And the two-year comparison is really important too. This is where I was before, and this is where I am now.
I also just wanted to mention, you had asked about the strategies. So in addition to reviewing data regularly and discussing it during our principals meetings and sharing with all of our stakeholders, we also coordinate what we call student outreach days. And so we go out into the community to knock on doors and to really learn more about why students are missing school. We offer resources and support. So that's something that we started implementing this past year, and it's been extremely successful for us.
I think it's interesting that you provide them a report of what it reflects in terms of lost ADA, right? I think our students are more than a dollar sign, and I think making sure that they're in school every day when they're well enough to be so is so critical for all the reasons to support their learning and their future. But I do think it's an incentive in understanding what's lost and what could be achieved. But this is a place, as you know, where every district struggles, and we're seeing declines in the state overall. It's not unique to Inglewood, but some districts have chosen to use county programs to help increase the number of home visitors who can intervene and do the more involved intervention for families who are experiencing homelessness, substance abuse, trauma. Don't know if this is a conversation that's happened with LACO or the county behavioral health, but the Medi-Cal dollars have proven to be a way to increase the number of folks who can do home visiting and then support to connect folks to resources specifically around reducing chronic absenteeism. Is that using Medi-Cal dollars, is that something that's in place, been explored, something we can help with? Is it something we can help with?
Yeah, that would be great. We would love to partner on that.
Very good. Thank you.
Any further comments? Want to thank Superintendent Thurman for lifting up those questions that I think we were all thinking about. I think they were very relative to the conversation. I just want to tell you, you are ground zero, I think, in terms of the work that needs to happen in the state, into concerted efforts for wraparound services. Your story is incredibly inspiring, and I think I saw the tension also emotional, because it's hard to understand how we got here. And it's but I just want to tell you, I think the journey is in the right hands, and there's a lot to lift up about this story, and I would love to work with our superintendent to lift your story up to the board level and elevate that conversation around what's happening across the state. But thank you for all that you do. There's a lot to learn from what's happening there in Inglewood. Thank you, Carla, and I'll let our executive director close. One last comment.
Just one thing, I'm really excited. I agree with everything, all the comments. This informal dispute resolution process, those lessons learned as you implement, working through Carla to make sure that gets brought out, because that could be a huge benefit for the entire state. And I think that engagement as well with those community partners and your labor partners in this work, I think is so important, because they're so vested in the community, and I think they could be a real asset in this great work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, what I wanted to make sure that it didn't get lost is Erica talked about LACO, right? And LACO has done an incredible job of leading this work, right? And we, in particular, the two positions of the two ladies that you see here today, right? They're funded through CCEE, but we had this original conversation, right? Because the district struggles, right, to attract people, and LACO said, we will go ahead and advertise those positions. They'll become our employees, and we can advertise them at our pay rate, right? So they'll be able to, it's a real strategy. And then they work for LACO, right? And so it's part of that team to go in there. They're working alongside the district, right? But under the leadership of LACO. Last week I attended the Superintendent Symposium for AXA, and the theme was courageous leadership, right? And one of the themes that I heard there is courageous leaders do two things. First thing they do is they raise their hand and say, let me in. And you did that, Erica, right? You were in there, and it's one of the hardest jobs. I think it's these jobs are the hardest jobs in the state. And you said, I want to do it, I want in, right? And these two ladies as well have asked to be a part of that. That's courageous. And courageous leaders upset the status quo, because the status quo doesn't meet the needs of every kid, right? And you're in there doing that, working collectively with folks every day to do that. So I just can't applaud your leadership enough. And I want to thank your sister, Carla, right, in particular, because you really are sisters, and we're very proud of her and that collective relationship. And the last thing I would say is, this is, in my opinion, the system of support working at its best, right? When you saw that collective, when people say, what is the system of support? That's it, right? That's it in real context. So thank you for your leadership.
Is there any public comment related to this item? Okay, there being none. Thank you again very much. Thank you. We'll go ahead and we'll do our last swearing in, Jim. Is that fine? And we'll take a break, give the board a sense of time. We'll take 10 minutes for us to be on schedule. We have 2 items that would need to be done by 11:30 for us to be on schedule. So, Stephanie, if you want to come up, we'll do our swearing in. Right up here is fine. Just so that people have context, because our state superintendent is kind enough to be part of these. He's also pulled in a million different directions. When he's absent, Stephanie will be filling in his spot. We'll take a 10-minute break. You guys good with that? Okay. All right, we'll call our meeting back in session. Everyone's having a great time out there. I'm sorry, I have to be the guy that breaks it up. Jim and Brooke keep looking at me. All right, thank you. That takes us to, we'll jump to item 5 to give the board a sense. Each of these items was scheduled for about 15 minutes to get us to an 11:30 break, followed by a 4-hour board workshop. So just keep that in mind. That brings us to item 5, review of the CCEE 2018-19 financial audit report. And Brooks Allen will be presenting. And Brooke, I'm glad you got the memo on the purple shirt and tie. That's awesome.
Just try to follow your lead. Good morning, Brooks Allen on behalf of the Collaborative's administrative agent, Marin County Superintendent Mary Jane Burke, who's with us here today. So proud to represent her and Deputy Superintendent Trina Mars, who's also with us. I will bring, well, with your help, I will bring this item in well under our 15-minute estimate. It'll save us some time for the other pieces. Because as with all audit items, it's always nice when we can come up here and say it's a clean audit, there's no findings, it's an information item. We've provided a copy of the audit in your materials for those of you who like perusing such things. And happy to answer any questions, but it's actually very nice, clean, and straightforward. So with that, open if there are any questions. If not, I'm prepared to move to the next item.
Are there any questions from the board? Wow, you could get us well under our 15 minutes on this one.
Trying to deliver for you.
It was a long document, 48 pages to dig into and to try and understand. I'm sure down the road there's going to be much more questions about the budget as we roll out the system and the support. Maybe in item 8, we'll probably talk more about that. Yeah, no findings is the key. So,
always we're one.
Any general public comment on this item? Okay, they're being done. Do I have a motion to approve or the review of the annual audit report for the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019?
So moved.
We have a motion by Board Member Rowe. No, there's no action, right? There's no action. It's just information. Yeah, yeah, we withdraw. My bad.
Always appreciate the endorsement, so I'm not going to turn it down. But
thank you. We were just endorsing your emotion. There we go. Thanks, Brooke. We approve you, Brooke. We approve you. I have a motion to approve you and a second by Sabranti. Thanks, Brooke. Appreciate it very much. Takes us to item 6, the governor's budget report. And Brooks, you're going to stay there, and that's information discussion only again.
Correct. So this one, probably just a little bit more time, but we have provided both a memo as well as an update. So the memo is based on what we knew when Governor Newsom released his budget back on January 10th and captured what we knew at that point about what was being proposed, both specifically for the collaborative and for those elements of the system of support and some of the pieces that we talked about briefly earlier today that were specific to the collaborative. But then just last Friday, always drops about 5 o'clock on a Friday night, the Department of Finance released additional detail about many of the governor's proposals in the draft trailer bill language. And so we put together an addendum that's in your materials. Thanks again to the wonderful Ms. Barragan for getting those things out. So for those of you who actually want to see all of this in black and white, want to get into all the nitty-gritty and the details, or if in our discussion you want to reference those, all of that detail from the trailer bill is there in your packet. Just as we take a step back, quick reminder, I mean, I think almost everyone here is a veteran of the state budget process. This is really just that starting point of the budget discussion. As the superintendent knows, as a former member of the legislature, this is part of the discussion where the governor opens with his early ideas and proposals, outlines priorities. The legislature is going to be responding. We'll see where revenues go as we head towards May and the May revision. So right now, this is really just to provide the board with an overview of what the governor has proposed, some of those details that are coming forth at this point, and frankly, all of which are somewhat in motion as we move forward. So with respect to the easy pieces, really what is proposed in the governor's budget in terms of the CC's ongoing funding is pretty much status quo from where we were last year, right? So more or less replicates that. There's some additional funds to handle additional administrative costs that were recognized by the State Department of Finance. Otherwise, the only shift is actually not to the overall sum for ongoing funds for the CCE, but actually a shift within the schedules. And that was In recognition, the Department of Finance has articulated that they've seen, through the evolution of the collaborative, that where part of the original vision might have been, hey, look, there's a ton of contracted, in fact, it's interesting, coming on the discussion we just had with Inglewood, a lot of contracted experts, consultants, others who would be working with local education agencies across the state. Really, in terms of to do this work and do it well, it probably means it has to be more actual staff, folks who can actually focus on this, not just in 5% of their work, 10% of the work, but folks who are really invested in this effort. And therefore, they have moved more funds in the schedule from the program side to the operations side. But the overall funding total is the same for 18-19 for the ongoing funds for the CCEE. The other pieces of what we see before us really are, I think, best captured in two major buckets. So when the CCEE was established back in 2013, as we all know, that statute, Member Sobrante, who's been there from the beginning, saw that really the core charge was for the CCEE to advise and assist local educational agencies. And then as the system of support has been built and really established by both the Brown administration and now Governor Newsom and his team, and they've started to add leads, and we've had geographic leads, the CCEE, in partnership with the department, has been asked to step in and help kind of facilitate and coordinate that. And so really they fall into those two main buckets. So we have some, beyond the ongoing funding, we also see that there is an ongoing role with the 21st Century California School Leadership Academy. So that's the ongoing federal funds for that purpose. Again, that's not funding that comes to the CCEE, but it's a role for CCEE to play in partnership with the department and continuing to implement that. And there is $200,000 that's proposed in federal funds that does come to the CCEE as part of that. Also, the ongoing implementation of the Educational Workforce Investment Grant. I'm not going to use that acronym. I hate that acronym. That they use. That was for the roughly $38 million that was proposed in one-time general fund last year. Those are grants that went to, or are going to go to, institutes of higher education or nonprofits. I raise that because it's distinct from what is going to be the newly proposed Educator Workforce and Investment Grant Program, which I'll speak to in a moment. So those are all ongoing pieces. So then we looked at what the governor released on January 10th, and the additional details came out last Friday. Now we're talking about potentially new work, potentially new roles and responsibilities that would come. So there is a new Educator Workforce Investment Grant Program that is proposed, and it's set forth in greater detail in the addendum I provided for you. Some of the key features here, this would be, again, the Department of Ed and CCEE collaborating to implement this effort. It's instead of $35 million, which was last year on one-time funds, it's $350 million. Another distinction is that it's $350 million in Proposition 98 one-time funds, not general fund. So therefore, these grants would be going to local educational agencies. They would not be going to IHEs or nonprofits as part of that. But again, trying to focus on great areas of need around professional development, as the superintendent was referencing, in terms of asking the folks from Inglewood, hey, if you can hang on, look, some of these additional resources are coming, or what folks will call our level 1 resources, so those that are available to everybody. You don't have to be eligible for differentiated assistance to access some of the resources here. Educator Workforce Investment Grant, both last year's program and this new one that's proposed, if enacted, would provide those types of resources. And again, CCEE would be partnering with CDE in doing that work and implementing that program, as well as the evaluation of that. In addition, as we continue to build out the system of support, so kind of stay in the system of support bucket, there is a proposal to establish a new computer science lead. So the Department of Ed would be selecting that lead in collaboration with the CCEE and choosing another county office of education. I don't know if Board Member Monroe wants to be the computer science lead, or other folks would be looking to establish that as a source of expertise. But there is a proposal that we'd establish a computer science lead. And then there'd be ongoing work the department and CCEE would do to try to integrate that lead into the system of support, in addition to our other both geographic leads and other subject matter specific leads to do that work. And to kind of staying in this, in the spirit of establishing new leads, there is a California dyslexia initiative that's been proposed. We know the governor has spoken about his personal story, as well as his tie to make sure that we're doing a better job of meeting the needs of all students who are struggling with dyslexia, and the amazing teachers who are working with them to meet their needs. So there would be a new county Office of Education Dyslexia Initiative lead as well. And again, selected Department of Education and CCEE to select that lead. And then the CC would have a responsibility of both helping work with that lead, the department, and a post-secondary institution to put on a conference to help really make sure that folks are better connected to both the resources and services that the lead's developing, as well as those that exist throughout the state, as well as do some work on the evaluation side of that effort. Again, should this be enacted as proposed, right? So there's a lot to come on that front. And then the final piece is part of the proposals that's specific to naming the CC as part of kind of the system of support effort, is there's funding that's proposed to go through the CC, and again, the CC would be, yet again, working with its partner with the department to work on passing these funds through to County Office of Education to really support the better facilitation and coordination of wraparound services. So this really goes to the community schools work that was discussed earlier, as well as just trying to make sure that county offices have a bit more resources, a bit more capacity to coordinate with county level service providers. There's not a ton of detail you'll see in terms of what's in the addendum right now, but right now it basically looks like $18 million that would flow through to the county offices to do that work. And so that's and the last proposal that's specific to CC that really speaks to the system of support work. And then lastly, going back to the original founding purpose of the CC as being the sole entity that has a sole charge of advising and assisting local educational agencies, there is a proposal for what they're calling the opportunity grants. And so there would be $300 million that's proposed that would go to any range of local educational agencies. It could be single schools, could be school districts, could be County Office of Education, could be charter schools. The requirements are really that the CC, in consultation with the department, create a program. Really, it's kind of a planning year that's proposed in the trailer bill. But during that planning year, there are a couple of key criteria that the proposal sets forth as sort of kind of North Stars. So, for instance, you have to be focused on schools and school districts, county offices that serve both students who are in schools that are low performing, with that definition to be worked out during that planning year, but then be high poverty. And this is not just kind of a term that's thrown out there. They actually propose some specific criteria that would be that any entity that was receiving this, so again, a school, a district, county office, charter school, serves a student population over 2 years that is at least 90% plus free and reduced price lunch in terms of the student's eligibility. So those are kind of two key criteria. So the administration said, look, we really want to focus on those areas of particularly high poverty, as well as where we see students who really need some help closing those achievement gaps, right? Focus on the equity piece of this. But we want to see this assistance. 90% of that $300 million is supposed to go to the schools, districts, county offices who'll be receiving those funds. And the CC would be charged, again, with putting together that plan and then helping lead that assistance effort, again, in close coordination with the key partner at the Department of Education to do that work. And really, that is almost in parallel to another $300 million program that doesn't specifically involve the CC, but has to do with around the community schools. And those funds would be coming through the department, is also focused on those wraparound services that the counties would be encouraged to integrate. So with those are kind of the key new pieces of what we've seen come out in the last couple of weeks. I think Tom probably has some comments as he's been kind of working through this with the team to do this work, but also happy to answer any questions about specifics of what we've seen so far.
For those keeping score at home, I think what is always important, I think, to the board is to understand resources that come as work as well, right? So Mary Jane's giving me the signal. You can't hear me, I can tell. So going back, right, so CSLA, remember CSLA was last year's budget, right? And last year we got a position, right? Part of that position.
Well, it's 200,000
ongoing.
It could be used for that, yes.
That's right. That's right. And so both for the administrative fee as well as a position. Educator Workforce Investment Grant last year and this year does not come with new resources.
That's correct.
Right? So new work, right? Work around, in particular, this year, a very large sum of money. And working with the department, neither the department or our organization are identified as getting resources for that work. Computer science, I believe, Brooks, 250,000.
There's up to 250,000 that would come, and again, that's not specifically scheduled out in the proposal.
Yeah, and I believe that's tied to the evaluation side of that work. The dyslexia lead, same thing, no resources that are coming with that, at least in the proposed budget, but some work around that. The 18 million that was referenced to is a flow-through, right? So no resources coming directly to the CCEE at this point that have been identified, right?
Right. And I do think it's worth noting there, as well as other pieces, again, as these things evolve, Department of Finance says, look, we don't have schedules yet. That doesn't mean there wouldn't be one at one point.
Right. And then the opportunity grants, 10%, right? And I think that would include work. That is part of that, as well as the work of, and I never want to forget the administrative agent and all of the, every time I talk about a contract, that's really them. A lot of work that goes involved in doing those resources too. So I just wanted to make sure the board was clear on where we are getting, where there are proposed resources and where there are not. Any resource that we're getting is actually tied to some new work.
Any comments, questions from the board?
Okay.
Go ahead.
So this question is in service of clarifying. So, there's both the documents that come out, the budget proposal that comes out in January, and then the revised proposal that comes out in May. And then there is the narrative that surrounds it. So whether it's produced by CCEE or whatever agency is actually providing that interpretation. And then there's the word on the street, which I think is also important to talk about and clarify as a body who has responsibility for decision-making around these funds or oversight of these funds. So something that has been talked about quite a bit is, the 18 million around, and I think the way it's been characterized most frequently is outreach and talking about making sure that we're getting out the word about the system of support. What I'm seeing here is that 18 million is tied specifically to the acronym that will go unnamed, but the Educator Workforce Investment Grant proposal. So am I understanding that correctly, or is there any clarification you can provide me there, or have I further confused the issue?
No, I can offer some.
Thank you.
Whether it's complete clarity, I don't know. But in part, I think this is a function of what we see at this point of the year in a budget process. So certainly what came out on January 10th was very brief, and we heard earlier hearings from the Department of Finance. I know in speaking with Tom, Suji, other members of the team, I was like, what is this, right? I mean, there was this idea that we saw 18 million. It talked about bolstering awareness of the system of support. What was that going to look like? What was the vision for that, right? I think we all kind of had this question of both asset administration, finance, what do you guys have in mind? By the time we saw the details come out, again, just as of last Friday night, it's a little different than how that framing was. And part of that's just when you wait for the detail that comes out, but the framing initially, it sort of sounded like, hey, $18 million is going to go CCEE, is going to have to kind of work on a public relations campaign. I mean, there was a lot, those were the questions on the street that we were hearing. We try to keep our ears there. But what came out, I think, is much more specific, right? And it's much clearer that at least at this point in this evolution, the proposal would be to have it flow through the CCEE to county offices of education to provide better coordination and facilitation of those wraparound services, with a particular eye to the fact, and this is, it's not educator workforce investment grants, but it's to looking at those county offices that have schools and districts or the counties themselves who are serving folks who are receiving either the opportunity grants and or the community schools grants. And those are identified as two factors. Now, it probably will evolve more, but at that moment, as of late last Friday, that's where it is, which is different than I think what people were initially reacting to when they saw it come out.
Thank you. That's helpful.
One brief comment. It's good to see some of the operational flexibility, just in terms of some of those general fund dollars and not having it so prescriptive and so programmatic, because, as the work, kind of morphs and, we're taking on different responsibilities, having a little bit of that internal capacity, I think, is really important. So, hopefully that sticks through the process and we're able to maintain that.
Anything else? General public comment on this item.
Ms. Chair. Peter Birdsall, Executive Director of CCEE, the County Superintendent's Association. First of all, we look forward to working with you and all the other education partners throughout the next several months to, come to agreement on the priorities addressed in the budget. I think we all agree the governor identified really key top priorities. Like everybody else, we're working through the language that just came out last Friday, and we know this is the beginning of that process. So I'm really offering these comments heading into the board discussion that's coming. I recall at the last board meeting, the chair talked about there's I think you said, a danger in being a jack of all trades. And I think that's one of the concerns. Certainly we struggle with it among the counties because we're involved in all these issues. I know the department obviously struggles with it. But for example, on the community school grants and wraparound services, we're working very closely with the Department of Education. We'd be very happy to work with CCEE, but it's just a matter of how, what's the best way to align all these. And then on, I did discuss this briefly with Tom, I think the board does need to discuss there is a danger in becoming sort of a duplicate state administrative agency, as CCEE is asked to move into the role of selecting who gets grants and how much they get as grants. The nature of the conversation with the LEAs begins to change from, I think what was initially the focus on partnership and collaboration. So, those are things that we're discussing internally. I think it's important for the board here to have discussion because, the one thing that's clear to all of us is these are the right priorities. We're only going to solve them by working collaboratively. So beyond that, I can't be more specific except to say that, as Brooke said, we all just got the language. We're trying to figure out what does it mean. We know it's not final. We'll be working with our education partners, with you and with the state board and obviously the administration. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any other questions, comments from the board or from the public? Okay. There being none, Brooks, I want to thank you again for the job that you do. I think that you too also bring a level of confidence and credibility, as well as the beautiful purple shirt that I so admire, to the work. I will say, this is, Peter, I appreciate your comments very much. This budget signals is a proposal, and to me it signals an opportunity that the governor is giving the system of support to improve. And having been in this system as a student for almost 49 years and a practitioner for 27, as my fellow colleagues will appreciate, we've come to a place in believing that the system is perfectly designed to put kids second to politics. And I think this budget gives us an opportunity, whether it's CCEE, CDE, and CCEE, it gives everybody an opportunity to stop with the assumptions and come back to the work and say, doesn't matter where the money goes, we have to work together to create better opportunities for kids, such as the example in Inglewood that we just heard. So I appreciate it, and I think this budget is a direct reflection of the governor's opportunity to the system to say, improve yourself. Let's find a way. Because if you can't do it through local control, there are others who believe they can do it by removing that local control. So I appreciate Brooks very much for the thorough oversight or overview of the budget.
My pleasure. Thank you.
At this time, Jim, I'd like to go for lunch, if that's all right. I'm not violating any board rules by just making it up. All right, so we'll break for lunch, and we need to be back here, Tom, at 11 or 12:15. Does that give us enough time?
Check with staff. 12:30, is that correct, ladies, or 12:15? 12:15, all right, we will follow. 12:15 it is.
Okay, we'll reconvene at 12:15. Thank you.